What happens when divorce doesn't just break your heart? It puts your entire future in this country at risk. For anyone ending a marriage can also mean facing terrifying questions about immigration status, legal protection, financial survival, and whether they'll be able to stay in the United States at all. So in this episode, we're going to be pulling back the curtain on what every immigrant spouse needs to know before making that move. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Divorcing Strong. I'm Becky Sampson, your host, and today's a little bit different of a show because it's a topic, to be honest with you, that I don't really know a lot about, which is the immigration part, but it is a very hot topic in the world at this point, or at least in the United States, and how that's handled. So many months ago, I got connected with our guest today, and I'm so happy that she's willing to come on and talk about this because she's got so much experience. She may not be specifically in divorce stuff because she does a lot, but she's seeing an increase of issues with divorce and immigration. So I'm excited to talk to her about that today. Also, just want to remind everyone to go ahead and like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if that's where you're watching it. Also, we are on all of the audio now. We release several episodes a week. So you can go to, I think it's Apple and also Spotify. We are trending on there, which is awesome. Divorcing Strong. Look for Divorcing Strong. And also, for those of you that want or are going through divorce or even have people that are going through divorce, you can go to this right here, this little QR code, and it has over 100 divorce legal terms. And that's really, really important to download that because you are more educated about what the legal system, the jargon, so you can talk to, if you're representing yourself, the courts, you understand the process, but you can also talk more knowledgeably if you have an attorney. Super important. I prepared that. And I just think it's probably one of the most important things you can do. So anyway, we want to just welcome you back on. So on today's episode of Divorcing Strong, I'm talking with our guest, Deirdre Nero. She is the founder of NERO Immigration Law, based in Coral Gables, Florida. Deirdre has guided hundreds of clients from around the world through the maze of U.S. immigration law for over 22 years. She holds an AV preeminent, I hope I said that right, rating, the highest possible peer rating for legal ethics and ability, and was named the 2024 Circle of Excellence winner in immigration law by the Miami-Dade Bar Association. She practices in both English and Spanish, which matters deeply when we talk about the communities most affected by this intersection of immigration. But she also told me that she works worldwide with all kinds of different people from different walks of life in immigration. So I want to go ahead and welcome her to the show.
Welcome. Hi. How are you? Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm just grateful that you're willing to come on here because I know divorce is not your specialty, but you definitely are seeing the increase.
I mean, I had a divorce. I think that gives me a little bit. No,
that's true.
I had a divorce in my younger days, but I'm happily remarried. So
yes,
but yeah, no, in terms of law, not my specialty, but touching what I do a lot in ways when you least expect it too. So.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting to talk about the connections.
Yeah, I love to start off before we kind of really dive into that is to ask you the question is like, what caused you to get into divorce? Like, what's the backstory, not divorce, I'm sorry, to get into immigration and into law, and what makes you passionate about what you do?
I was going to say, what caused me to get into divorce was a cheating ex-husband, but that's a story for another podcast. But what caused me to get into immigration law was my love with working with international people. I had an amazing study abroad, living abroad experience in my younger years. And when I got back and I started to like focus my career a bit and see like what I really wanted to do, I was like, okay, I want international clientele, but I don't know like
Where did you live, by the way?
what that means. I lived in southern Spain. It was amazing.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I learned Spanish,
Yeah.
which was very helpful in my career. Little did I know that I was making like really good decisions at the time. I thought I'm just like, ooh, I'm going to have fun. But it ended up being like really good decisions that helped me advance my career. So that worked out really well.
Yeah.
But I just knew I wanted to work with international clientele. And like through school, I was kind of dabbling in all the different classes that had to do with something international. And I was kind of like, I don't like any of this. It's all like not something I can envision until I hit immigration law. And then I was like, finally had a class where I felt interested and like wanted to do the homework, wanted to raise my hand, like was super into it. Felt like I was like, it was real like clicking. Did not feel like that in the majority of my law school classes. So that led me to kind of start interning in that area at a firm, and then eventually taking that on as my practice area. And it's the only thing I've done for 22 plus years now is solely immigration law.
I was going to say 22 years is quite a long time. You probably have seen a lot of changes happen in that.
I was telling someone yesterday that the last year and a couple of months have been the craziest and hardest in my 22 years so far. And that's kind of the nature of the beast of immigration law, is like it fluctuates a lot depending on the administration in power. And as you alluded to in the intro, right now, things are rough, right? Like immigration is a hot topic, and not in like a pleasant way, but more in like a restrictive kind of negative way. And so for the advocates like myself and my colleague advocates, who are out there kind of fighting the good fight every day on this, it's been a challenging year and 3 months, to say the least. But people need us now more than ever, so we're all just hanging in there.
Yeah. So what would you say the most, the difference, as you said, you had a year and a half, it's been different. What has been different that you've seen?
So this administration in particular is, immigration is like their hot button topic. And not in a good way, right? Like some administrations, it's a hot topic, but it's more like, how do we reform it? How do we make it better? How do we increase high-skilled immigrants? Like all good things that we're like, yay, the advocates get happy. But this administration in particular, more so than we've seen in the past, or even more so than we saw in the first Trump administration, has been, very restrictionist, very wanting to limit immigration in a lot of ways, wanting to do mass deportations, be much more aggressive, much more in your face, much more even, just the rhetoric surrounding the topic is much more negative than we're used to. I mean, our country typically has a very immigrant-friendly ideals. Immigration is the cornerstone of what built our nation, and what we're all about at the end of the day. And so it's a little bit of like a weird turn for our country, in the opinion of a lot of the advocates, right? I'm not saying everyone holds that opinion. Obviously, like there are people that agree with what's going on right now, but I think you'll find that the majority of advocates that represent immigrants and families and companies that employ immigrants, et cetera, are, disagreeing with a lot that's going on right now, and also just facing a challenging time when things are just really hard.
So what would you say, what's the main thing that you work with? Do you advocate for the ones who are working on immigrating here, or are in the process of it?
I'm all both, right?
Okay.
Like, so we help people who aren't here yet get here and stay here legally, but we also help people who are already here either fix a bad situation that they're in, or try to fix their immigration if it went awry in some way. And sometimes that's because of a divorce. And we'll delve into that, I'm sure. Or, just lengthen what they're doing, extend out, their time frame that they're allowed to stay in the US, maybe change the basis of their immigration status to something else, or make it something more permanent, like transitioning from a non-immigrant, which is like a temporary visa to permanent residence or green card, and then eventually to citizenship if that's something that, they are able to do and want to do. So we kind of help people along that whole path in like a variety of different ways. So it keeps it interesting because even though we only do immigration, that means a lot of things, that encompasses a lot of different types of things that we are able to do.
That's exactly what I was just going to say is
Yeah.
that the first thing that came to my mind is like, it's probably fairly interesting to you because every
Very
case is a little bit different
Mhm.
depending on what country they're coming from, what their status is, what they've done, what they haven't done. How do you fill in those gaps to make sure that it's nice and solid,
For sure. It keeps us on our toes, number one, because there's like every fact pattern's like a little different and it always kind of changes then everything in a myriad of ways that, trickle down to the most minute details. Like, so it's very fact specific, everything we work on, but then it's also just cool in a way because we get to work with people from all over the world and going to different places in the US or living in different places in the US, different cultures, different languages, a lot of different, because we work with a lot of people with like special abilities and special talents and cool, jobs or things that they've invented or things that they do. And so that gets really interesting too, because we work with a variety of people that do really interesting and cool jobs and experience.
Yeah,
So
I was just thinking, this is the same thing with subpoenas, right? It's like they're not one subpoena is the same.
Yeah.
And I've spent this morning all doing subpoenas and doing all the deep dive, research into it. And I can imagine it would be the same thing. Something you said before we started the show is that this is a federal thing because most people think, attorneys can just practice in one state, but you are nationwide. Talk a little bit about that.
That's one of the cool things about immigration law. It's one of the few practice areas that basically, as long as you have like the bar of one state, you're able to practice in any state. And take clients in any state and other countries. And, it opens up the world a lot as to who we're able to take on as clients and deal with and where they're located. And also, I think the pandemic, which made us a lot more comfortable with doing things remotely and online and videos and, because we were all forced into that, basically. We were already doing a lot of that because of the international and spread out nature of our practice. Like people can't always come in person and meet with you because they might not even be in the country or they might be in another city or state. So we kind of already did that, but I saw like post-pandemic or started during the pandemic and then just continued, never stopped, that the comfort is there now to be able to basically, it doesn't matter where your office is, you can be helping people anywhere, which is nice.
So did that open up your business to a lot more business?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also opened up my mind to like the kind of business development that I needed to be doing. Right. And like, I do a lot of hyper local stuff, but like, okay, like maybe I need to shift to things that aren't all so local based. Right. And start branching out to marketing and business development in other parts of the country and even in other countries.
Yeah, so it definitely changed the whole dynamic of everything. And I know as we kind of start diving into like divorce, I mean,
caused a lot of divorces too. So I hear.
I have to say, Deirdre, I was in Hawaii when I was going through my divorce, and it was interesting. I lived in an apartment right there on the beach. It was one of the only apartment complexes actually on that side of the island. And during COVID, I heard so many more arguments, you know what I mean? Just because, and it was just really sad to me because obviously we sleep with our windows open because of the breeze and it's quite humid there and everything. So you're hearing things a lot more. And so, it was hard for me to hear that. Cause I mean, first of all, I've dealt with domestic violence and I've dealt with all of that stuff. So it's hard for me to see that, but I definitely saw the increase of that. Unfortunately. So it did. And it's funny. I always meet people too. They're like, oh yeah, you're a COVID divorce. That's not the reason why I was divorced, but
COVID babies, COVID pets, and COVID divorces.
I know. It's crazy.
Lots of all of those things.
So you said that there's kind of an increase in divorces, or you're seeing cases with divorces and immigration. Talk a
I
little
don't
bit
know if it's
about
a
that.
coincidence. Like, I think people are always getting divorced, and if they have immigration somehow involved in their lives, like typically a divorce will impact their immigration status in some way. But so I don't know that there's necessarily an increase. I don't know if it's a coincidence. And lately, I've just been having a lot of issues in my practice that somehow involve like a divorce making the immigration stuff very messy, like, and much more messy than it would have been otherwise. And so
Well, can you give me an example of like
top
maybe
of mind, even though I don't know if it's necessarily like increased statistically or anything like that. Yeah, there's a couple. I think you were going to say to give you some examples, right?
Yeah, just like, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously one person's maybe American, the other one's not, and maybe they're
So
married.
that's
Now
the
they're getting,
typical one you think of,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And obviously that we see a lot of that. Like the one person's American, they marry a foreign national, they're sponsoring that foreign national for a green card,
Mhm.
and that's based on the marriage, right? And so then what happens if that marriage breaks down? And what happens if the marriage breaks down at point A or point C or point F, right? Like, because there's a journey to immigration where it's like you're more vulnerable at certain points of that journey to like losing your status or to it causing a problem than you are maybe later on in the journey. And so, a lot of what we're analyzing is not just, okay, like, can this person still even continue on this path towards getting their residence if they divorce, but like, at what stage of the process are they? And so how badly will the divorce affect the case, right? And
Yeah,
so
so
the
you said that
outcome.
there's more risk at the very beginning. Talk a little bit about
Right,
that.
because when you're still kind of in the starting stages of the process and you haven't even like received the first green card yet,
Mhm.
if you divorce at that point, like pretty much all you're done. Like that case is over, and the person who is not the U.S. citizen will have to find another way to stay in the US if the divorce happens kind of at that earlier standpoint. And then maybe once you have the green card, but you have a conditional residence, because a lot of times when a green card is based on marriage, if the marriage is a younger marriage and you haven't been married for already 2 years when they are adjudicating the green card case, they give you what's called conditional residence. They give the immigrant conditional residence, which means it's only good for 2 years. And then at the 2-year point in the 90-day like time frame leading up to that 2-year expiration date, the couple needs to together file another application showing that they're still married, that they still live together, they still have commingled finances, update all of their like marriage bona fides to show that this relationship is still a valid relationship. So if the marriage breaks down then in that period, right after they've been granted the first green card, but before they're able to get that petition filed at that 2-year mark, that's also making the immigrant vulnerable, but they can at that point petition themselves, like by asking for a waiver of the joint filing requirement. But you have to be actually divorced, right? So a lot of times what we see is like, well, we're getting divorced, but we're separated, but we're not together, but we haven't finalized yet. And I'm just like, unfortunately, the law doesn't, and the forms that you have to fill out don't contemplate like that situation.
Right.
You're either like married and you're doing it together and you're showing how happy you are and how great the marriage is going and that you've had a kid in the meantime and whatever, or you're divorced and you're showing, okay, we're divorced, the marriage didn't work out, but you should still grant me my 10-year green card because I didn't get married just to get a green card. It just happened that something happened and the marriage broke down irrevocably and we got divorced, right? And so like you have to be like one or the other. So if you're kind of like still married but separated, but maybe trying to work it out, but maybe not, that can cause also another issue for.
So do you find that there's people sometimes that threaten that, like, look, I'm going to divorce you if you don't do certain things, and then you're going to be thrown out of the.
100%. And if it gets into the realm that is abusive and threatening and doesn't just have to be physical abuse, it can be other kinds of mental abuse or, financial controlling. Like there's a lot of
Right.
things that can fall under, the parameters that would then allow the immigrant spouse to say that they qualify, for example, for a Violence Against Women Act petition instead of a petition based on their marriage. But you have to be able to prove that, like anything else in immigration law. So if it's just a lot of talk, he did this, she did that type of thing,
Right.
like, that's not going to fly. But if you can actually document that there's been some kind of abusive nature of that relationship, be it physical or otherwise, sometimes the immigrant spouse can still get a green card on their own by claiming that, they qualify for this type of case, which is a Violence Against Women Act petition for residents.
Does it
That goes for men and women, even though it's called Violence Against Women Act.
Yeah, I was gonna say, absolutely, because I'm sure that, I'm for equal rights, right? Like men and women both. I always say to people, I'm a man lover too, so I'm not going to go on either way. But I'm not for abuse in any manner of the fact. But the thing I was thinking about is that is there any kind of advantage at all if they've had children together in this country?
There could be. I mean, a lot of times children are great, like sounds like a weird way to say it, but great evidence for like proving that you have a real marriage, because you're typically not going to marry, not going to have kids with someone that you marry just to get a green card, right? Like that's usually doesn't happen. So like kids can be good evidence, which is a little bit of like a cold way to say it. Can you tell I don't have kids when I say that? But also it's it can be problematic as well, right? Because, for example, I'm dealing with a situation now where there's a couple. They're both immigrants, so not an American sponsoring. They're both immigrants. They're here on temporary work visa that was petitioned by the husband based on his job, and the wife and the husband, and they have kids. And one of their kids is a U.S. citizen, and one of their kids is a foreign national. And they basically are getting divorced now, and the wife is going to lose her immigration status once the divorce is finalized, right? And so that becomes an issue, because then it's like, okay, if the wife loses immigration status and has to go back to their home country, but the husband has like a pretty powerful job in the U.S. and he intends to stay and keep working on his work visa.
What happens to the kid?
What happens to the kids? Yeah. And then you have like one U.S. kid that could stay, the other kid that could stay with the dad, but potentially wants to leave with the mom, or the mom wants, and so it creates like a custody battle nightmare, and puts the whole family in a really odd position where they have to kind of not only decouple their lives and deal with everything that goes with divorce and the financial aspect of that and the custody arrangements, but then also like, what are we going to do about this immigration situation, right? Because typically for the married couples that come together on temporary visas, there's always one principal applicant, and then there's always like the spouse that's the dependent. And if that divorce happens while they're on that immigration status, the person who's the dependent automatically loses their status the day the divorce is final, and the other person is not affected. Their status stays the same because it was based on like their work or their
right, exactly.
Right. So that causes a whole other issue, and we see a lot of that, and people a lot of times don't think about it, right? And then they'll call us and be like, "Oh, we're getting divorced," and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is gonna be a nightmare like that. We have to now sort out."
And are there any options at all for someone that find themselves in that situation? Can she?
We have to look at then that person, right? Because no longer is their immigration going to be able to be based on solely on someone else's merit and what their situation is, their job or their whatever talents or what have you. But it's going to have to be based on themselves, right? Because now all of a sudden they're a single person that they can't depend on the dependent's case, and they have to figure out for themselves, like, do I qualify for anything in my own right? Like, what's my education? What's my career? Do I work? Do I have money to invest? Do I have like the ability to do something else? Do I have my own independent employer that's willing to, offer me an immigration sponsorship? So a lot of times it's hard. And I think not always, but a lot of times might disproportionately affect the woman, because a lot of times the woman is in the home raising the kids, maybe not working or hasn't worked in a long time. And so it's complicated then, because if we're all of a sudden like, well, you got to get a visa based on your career, and they're like, well, I haven't worked in 25 years, or something, like it can be awfully complicated. And then so that also like, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So this is a question that just came to me is that, and maybe this is just my ignorance about immigration, but could they not also somehow attach it to someone else if they didn't have a job, if they have family that's here,
so not a temporary visa like that. Like if it's something that's not a green card and not citizenship, but you're here on like a work visa, like typically if you're not like in a spouse relationship, there's no way to like benefit off of someone else. Family or child, but we're talking about divorce, so we're not really talking about the child per se. I mean, the children of that couple become, they have issues then as well, usually, because their status is also. But the children are still children of the principal applicant, regardless of that divorce, right? That relationship doesn't.
No, but what I was saying is that family members.
There's no other family relationship that can help in that specific circumstance. If we're talking about green card stuff, potentially a family relationship with another citizen could help. But a lot of times, if it's like a more distant relationship, let's say cousin, grandparents, like those are familial relationships that even confer any immigration benefit at all. And then if it's like a sister or brother that's a U.S. citizen, those could confer an immigration benefit on the immigrant, but could take upwards of 15 to 20 years. So then that leaves the person in a position of, well, I still have to leave the U.S. because you can't, that process is a particularly long process for a variety of reasons. So,
okay, Deirdre, this is the reason why people need to call you, because this is super complicated.
It's very complicated. And there's another thing that I was thinking of when we, when I answered that last question, was that, let's say this couple that I'm referring to, or, a couple like that, where they have a non-immigrant work visa and they're both on, the main applicant is one person and the dependent is the other person. Let's say then they stay married and they apply for a green card based on, the one main spouse's work. If then they're in that green card process and the marriage breaks down during that process, again, the person who is not the main beneficiary of that benefit is going to lose their status. And if they get the green card, and they divorce after, typically it's okay. But like what happened, I had this situation years ago where they divorced and the green card came in the mail like 2 weeks later.
Oh, no.
And for both of them, because the divorce wasn't even like the ink wasn't even dry yet on the divorce, but it was finalized prior.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, you have to relinquish that. You can't keep that card. Like, you're literally not entitled to that card. That divorce was finalized before that case was approved and before you were issued that green card. And unfortunately, like, that spouse who wasn't the main applicant ended up having to relinquish that green card and go back to their country. And it, if the timing had just been like a little different, they honestly could have kept it and stayed in the U.S. So that it's very sensitive in terms of like when you finalize that divorce, like where are you in the process of getting divorced, because it's going to make a big difference.
That is a lot. Do you find that people try to do this on their own, or do they usually hire?
Yeah, and it's typically a disaster if they do, and then we get them, after that, and they're, crying into their coffee that they have to leave the U.S. and did everything wrong. And, sometimes we can fix it and sometimes we can't, and so I highly recommend that people use immigration counsel for anything immigration related. And it's not just because it's like what I do, and obviously I'm going to say that type of deal, but it's that I've just seen so many people have tried to do stuff themselves or with like a notary or a paralegal who's like not related to a law firm in any way. It's just like a random person calling themselves a title that doesn't really mean anything. And it's a mess, right? And they get themselves into a real predicament by not having gotten the proper advice. And sometimes like you can't unring the bell. Like a lot of times with immigration, like once the damage is done, like it's done.
I love that.
We can't.
I love that you say that. Sorry. I love that you say that you can't unring the bell. Like
Yeah.
that. And I do see that oftentimes too, you know, when people call me, and I always make this is one of the things I always say on this podcast is that if you can engage the right people early on in the case,
Yeah.
then you can really save yourself a lot of money, time, and energy.
Heartache
Getting
and
halfway
distress.
through it, and then
Yeah.
now you're like, there's just, you can't go back on some things, and it's so much harder to
I mean,
get
sometimes
things
we can fix it, but it's going to
Yeah.
take a lot more time and money and
Yes.
energy and stress, you know? So, and maybe it's not like the ideal solution that you would have hoped for, but it's like an acceptable solution that costs you then 10 times as much. And like, you didn't even get the best outcome that you could have had otherwise. So yeah, immigration law is actually quite complex, even though it's like one of these types of law that's like deceptively simple. Like people think, oh, I'll just fill out this application form and mail it in and, you know, it's all good. And it's like, that's not it at all, because there's so much intersection between the way that all of this works.
Yeah.
And little things that can affect everything in like a giant way. So yeah, we see a lot of this, and it's hard because I'm not a divorce attorney, right? And I'm not, you know, a mental health counselor, but you know, obviously I want to be sympathetic to my clients. I want to try to help them in the best way I can, but like sometimes you just have to give tough love. And you know, I'm working with someone now who's yearning to get a divorce, like really wants to get a divorce, like very badly. Since I've been talking to this person, and it's been like 2 years that we've been talking, and like haven't really found the path forward quite yet, but is like desperate to get a divorce, but is basically feeling like they're trapped because they're a dependent on their spouse's immigration status.
And they don't want to go.
And they don't want to go, and their kids are also don't want to go, and the kids have their life here and their school and their et cetera. So has felt really trapped, and that has made this person very resentful and very, you know, like it's like you can, it's palpable. Like the negative energy coming off of this person is just, you can feel it through a telephone. Like it's intense, but it's like, I'm not surprised, right? Because look at the situation this person's been in, like feeling trapped and feeling miserable for years. So we found a path forward for this person, and you know, it's been rough because it's costing this client a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of grief and a lot of, you know, and I'm like, just hang in there. You know, you got to just hang in there. When we get to the finish line, you're going to be free.
I know. I always say that.
Divorce, like this is the end game. Like I know this part sucks because it's costing you a lot, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of stuff that maybe you didn't envision for yourself. Starting a business and getting your own visa based on a business, right? Like she was like, what, you know, like, but it's gonna allow this person the freedom to then stay in this country on their own right, and not have to be dependent on the spouse. And then I think that's gonna, first of all, maybe it'll even allow them to heal the relationship, and maybe they won't even get divorced. Because I think just that whole beholden to the other person thing creates like a whole weird energy in a marriage that can cause like a lot of problems and a lot of like power dynamics that can mess a relationship up a lot, you know. But I suspect they'll get divorced, and but at least she'll, you know, she'll finally be free.
So I had another question, just kind of the immigration, like kind of a last question on this, is that how does that work if maybe they both come to America and they both are starting a business and then they're getting divorced? How does that affect the immigration?
So it really depends on how the visa was structured, right? Okay. Were they both kind of like applicants in their own right as business owners? if they are, and it's not like one person dependent on the other person's case, then a divorce really wouldn't affect that aspect of it, the immigration. There's obviously going to be probably other implications for those businesses, especially if they started them while they were married or they were co-owners or co-investors or whatever. But in terms of the immigration, it could be like a pretty clean break. But the problem usually happens with married couples, even if they're both entrepreneurs or they're both maybe working in the same business, right? Because we see that a lot, like husband wife duo or, you know, spouse duo that comes and starts a business together. But it doesn't make sense when they're happily married. And, you know, I'm not like assuming people are going to get divorced, right? Like when they come to me, they're married and they've been married for a long time and they've got kids and they're, you know, like a normal couple. So I'm not, in my brain, I'm not like, well, what if you get divorced? You know, so like we typically would do one person as the principal and the other person as the dependent, because then you only need like one case. You don't need to do two cases with two fees and two files and two everything, right? You can just do one and you have like, but a lot of times like those spouses are not actually like one is the principal and one they're co-investing, they're 50-50 owners of the business. They're, you know, one person is, you know, does this aspect of the business and the other person does this aspect of the business, both equally important to that, making that business function. And because it was, though, only one case where one person we had to put as the principal and one person was the dependent. And it's not always, you know, what you would think. It's not always the man is the, you know, and no, like a lot of times it's the other way around. And it might also depend on their nationality, because a lot of those investor cases where they're entrepreneurial and they're investing, it might matter what nationality they are, and they might be different nationalities, and maybe only one spouse has a qualifying nationality. So we have to put that spouse as the main one, even if they are not actually like the main business person. That one has to be like the principal based on their nationality. Sometimes it happens that way. So,
well,
in those circumstances, that divorce is catastrophic because it just
basically, I think it's
everything up.
I think the message is don't get divorced.
I know. I'm like, are you sure you really want to get divorced? You can't work it out, because we're gonna have to do a lot of immigration shenanigans if you pull the trigger on the divorce. Yeah.
Well, divorce is complicated anyway, and then you add this on, and then kids, and it's just, you know, people oftentimes think, it's funny because I tell them I'm in the divorce space, right, supporting people to divorce, but I really would much rather have people work it out, you know, and get the help that they need to be able to stay together, especially when you're dealing with this many aspects, or like there's just so many layers of complexity. And again, and another reason why it's important to reach out to someone like yourself to be able to go, look, let me navigate this through with you, because, or what are your choices? What are your rights? Right. Because if you don't, I always say this, is that if you don't know your rights, then you have no rights. That's right. Oftentimes people going through this time in their life, they don't think straight. And it's really, it's hard. I mean, and you've been divorced, so you know it. You know what it's like.
I do know what it's like, and I mean, I definitely think even if you're not sure if you want to get divorced, if it's even something that you're like remotely contemplating, and you do have an immigration related aspect of your life, it's definitely a good idea to talk it through with someone like me to find out, like, okay, how's this going to affect me? How's this going to affect my kids? What are my options? What options do I not have? What options do I have? You know, and just so to know with your eyes wide open, like what you're getting into beyond just the messiness of the divorce and the custody issues and all of that, splitting of your life. Like, then also what am I getting into in terms of like my immigration status, my future in the U.S.?
So speaking of which, do you do consultations if people call you? Okay, awesome. I was going to say, look, if you know anybody or you are going through
consultations a day, many.
That's what's important, is that there's people out there that will do that. So they can go to your website to sign up for a consultation.
Yeah, I mean, yes. The best way is to send me an email, but you can definitely jump on my website and get my email address there and send us a message that you would like to set up a consultation.
Oh, good, good. And if you want to send me, or actually, I can actually add that to the show notes if you want to put it there, or if you want to just do it on your website too, so that they can reach you.
That'd be great.
I just think you are worth your weight in gold, because this is, and maybe it's just my ignorance. I don't know a whole lot about this area, but I do know when you don't know it, get those experts that do.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously too, like the stakes are high.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's why it's like really important to, you know, like, will you fix a cut on your arm on your own with a Band-Aid and some Neosporin? Yeah. But, you know, if your whole arm gets chopped off and is hanging by like a thread, like, are you going to try to fix that with a Band-Aid? No, you know, like when the stakes are high, you need to like really get some good professional experience in there to help you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know you've been through a divorce, so I'm hoping you can give us a good answer with this one. But the question I like to ask at the end is, what does divorcing strong mean to you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it actually speaks to me a lot, because I think when I went through my divorce, I was not divorcing strong. I was divorcing weak and sad and terrified. But I think what came out of my divorce was, you know, basically my life completely changed. And at the time I couldn't see that it was for the better. But now in hindsight, I'm like, you know, thank God for that divorce, because it completely changed my trajectory of my whole life in several ways. And I became a business owner, and started my own firm based on some of the events in my divorce. And I struggled a lot with alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune disease that I have. And if you guys look me up at all, you'll see all about it, because I'm an outspoken advocate. But that all started happening around the time of my divorce. And I don't think if I went through what I went through, I would have ended up where I am now. So now when I hear divorcing strong, I'm like, that's what I did. Yeah. Even though at the time it felt not like that at all. It was basically like, you know, the end of the world at the time. But I know in hindsight, it's like, okay, well, it didn't end up being such a bad thing in all after, you know, I see where it's brought me.
I agree. I think when I was going through my divorce, I had a girlfriend of mine call me, and she's like, Becky, at some point you're going to look back on this and say, wow, that was the most amazing time of my life. And I was like, oh yeah, right. But now looking back, I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I hadn't been through that.
That's exactly right.
To serve people. So
and people said that to me too. That must be a line to give people that are going through a divorce. But it's true. So it's a good line.
Yeah, no, I love it. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today.
And this was fun.
I know what you do is very valuable, very, very valuable, and to help people really navigate those crazy waters of immigration. So if that's you, please reach out to Deirdre. And she can direct you into the right place and give you some advice that will help you get the information that you need for your rights. Because I love that you call yourself an advocate. That's huge. I feel the same way for me too.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes. Hold on. Thanks. Oh, wow. What an amazing conversation, because I feel like I learned a lot. I don't know about you. I know that I'm going to say this one more time, that if you are in this situation, or if you have a friend or a family in this situation, please don't try to do this on your own. I sometimes think that some people can, you know, but in this, maybe it's because I'm feeling a little overwhelmed with like, oh my gosh, there's a lot involved in this. So make sure you reach out to Deirdre and go to her show notes and contact her and see how she can help you. And thank you again for joining us on another episode of Divorcing Strong. I'm Becky Sampson, your podcast. I've been your host, and make sure to join us on all of the audio platforms and also YouTube. Like and share with someone that needs this information, and we'll see you on the next show. See you later. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.